Welcome to Flagler in Focus, the podcast where we dive deep into all things Flagler County. I'm your host, Karen Callahan, and with each broadcast, we'll explore the people, places, and events of our community. From interviews with local experts, community leaders, and fabulous folks with stories to tell, we're your go-to source for staying connected to what's happening in Flagler County. And we're thrilled to have with us today a very special guest, the Director of Emergency Management for Flagler County, Jonathan Lord. He is here to share his expertise and provide us with everything we need to know to stay safe and prepared. So whether you're a longtime resident or new to the area, today's episode is packed with information. Jonathan, how are you today?
Great. How about you?
I am doing well, thank you. So let's start off with introductions. Let our listeners know who you are and how you got into the field.
Oh, that's an interesting one. So my first life after high school and college was actually doing EMS, emergency medical services, so on an ambulance. So that was really my first career for about 13, 15 years, something like that.
Oh, wow.
And then that was actually up in New Jersey. Mm-hmm. And then in 2004, I moved down to the home of hurricanes, Miami. Uh-huh. And spent...
what a great year for hurricanes that was.
I didn't know much about hurricanes, but I learned an awful lot all in 1 year.
Oh my gosh, yes. Right. It was trial by fire, I bet.
It really was. It's only 6 months in and we're getting hit by storms left and right.
Oh my goodness.
Our running joke down there in Miami-Dade, so I work for the county, so Miami-Dade County Emergency Management was every other weekend because it always seemed to happen on a weekend.
Yeah,
every other weekend we were stuck at work because there was another hurricane coming
Of course. So, and then how long have you been here at Flagler County?
So I've been here a little over 6 years now. So I did about more than a dozen, like 13 years in Dade County, worked my way up the rank to deputy director there. And then in 15, I think around 15, don't hold me to those dates.
I'm writing them all down here.
I actually got the privilege to go work under Governor Scott as the deputy director of emergency management for the state for a few years. Mm-hmm. And honestly, what got me looking back to local government was Hurricane Irma in the Keys.
Oh, wow.
I actually went back to the Keys, back down to local government on behalf of the state, representing the state, and spent 2 weeks in Monroe County, literally the day after impact, and then 2 weeks from that point out. And I realized how much I missed working in local government. Mm-hmm. At the same time, the governor's administration was changing anyway, and usually when you're in a higher level positions, you need to start looking for other jobs anyway, or at least start that process.
Okay.
I know that my predecessor here and the county was no longer working for the county here. Mm-hmm. The county hadn't even posted a position yet. So what I actually wrote an old-fashioned letter on a piece of paper.
What's that?
Yeah. I actually found a stamp and everything. It was great. To one of our former county administrators here, and then followed up with an email as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And said, hey, I know that you and my predecessor had parted ways. Not sure when you're going to start looking, but I kind of said, hey, I miss being in local government, and that was kind of my introduction from myself to the administrator. Yeah. And then I ended up being one of the finalists and all that great stuff. Was scheduled for like an hour interview and ended up being like a half-day interview. We just kept talking. I guess we hit it off really
great.
well. But I also fell in love with the community. I mean, we came down. I brought my family with me, and we kind of toured Flagler County for like a weekend, and we're like, this is a really nice community and a great place to raise a kid and all that stuff. So 2018.
Yeah.
I think the first week of 2018 is when when we moved down here.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it is a beautiful county. I'm in love. So let's dive into the crux of this. So we'll start with the lingo. So if you can explain to viewers the difference between low pressure system, tropical storm, hurricane.
All the good,
all the way
all
through.
the good nerdy
all the way
words
through.
that we use. All right, so a hurricane is a tropical system, so it has to start in the tropics or near the tropics, and it's a system of low pressure inherently, which is just think about the regular air pressure. It's a lower than normal air pressure, which allows things to develop.
So the lower the pressure
inherently equates to the stronger the storm.
Okay.
And it's not like I get this number, it's this. It's kind of like a scale a little bit.
Yeah.
And then so you need a system in the first place, so a low pressure area with storms like a regular storm in the first place. Then you also need to be over warm water, 80 degrees or warmer inherently for a hurricane to start. And you need to make sure that it's not upper level winds or what we call wind shear that can stop the hurricane from developing up into the atmosphere.
Okay.
So as long as you have a system, like a low pressure system, plus warm water, plus low to no wind shear at the top, then hurricanes can develop or tropical cyclones can develop. And they start off as tropical depressions. And when they become tropical depressions, the Weather Service gives them a number. And most people don't pay a lot of attention to that.
Yeah.
But when you see something called TD1, TD2, TD3, and the number resets every year, just know that's something worth watching. And if they hit a certain speed, 39 miles an hour or 40, they may call it a tropical storm. We'll typically call it a tropical storm. If it hits 74, then it's a Category 1 hurricane, and then as the speeds goes up. And the speeds they're talking about there in those systems is the speed that goes around the eye.
Okay.
So not the speed of it moving forward, not the speed further out, but right around the eye, that's that central core. That's the wind speed they actually measure, and then that's what creates the category of storm.
Okay. So, yeah, so of course the faster, it's faster in the center.
Fastest,
okay.
And again, and what that really means to us is the faster that center spins, that means the rest of the storm can be stronger. Here in Flagler County and any coastal county in the U.S., but particularly Florida, what we worry about is we don't inherently worry a ton about the wind directly because a lot of our homes are built to be somewhat hurricane resistant depending on where you live in the state and how new your home is, but they're typically built to some level of hurricane resistance to the wind. But within that area of low pressure too, and the wind's whipping around, water gets moved around. And again, these have to form over water in the first place. Hurricanes don't form over land. They have to form over some body of water. So think about the middle where this low pressure is, the middle of a storm, the eye, and a lot of people who've heard of hurricanes before know that hear about the calm in the center of the storm because right in the middle, it is calm. That area of low pressure right in the middle creates a kind of for lack of a better term, like a bubble of water. And that water in the middle of the ocean, it's kind of like a bubble. If you're not there and there's no boat there, it doesn't really bother anybody, right? Then sometimes they call them fish storms because it only bothers fish. But as it approaches land, this little bubble or raised area of water has to go somewhere, and it creates something called storm surge, which is water, almost like a wave, but a very large wave, very much like a tsunami. And it creates this wall of water that has to go somewhere, and it goes to path of least resistance. So it's going to be onto land, and then it's going to kind of lay itself down over time. That's what we actually worry about most in a hurricane. If you're a coastal community, that's our biggest concern, not the direct wind correlation, even though the wind ties back to causing the storm surge. But that's what our big concern is. That's why our evacuation zones are typically radiate out from a body of water.
Yeah, and you speak about evacuation zones. I heard recently that we're straying away from A, B, and C like we have in past years.
Yep. So A, B, C, D, E, all the way up to F is common throughout the state of Florida, around everywhere. All coastal counties have some kind of numbering scheme A through. They may not go as high as F, but we used to go as high as F.
Okay.
We're unique here in Flagler County. I'm proud that we're unique.
Yes, we are unique.
But we also have neighborhoods called the B section, and the C section, and so on and so forth. And as you might be able to imagine, that causes a lot of confusion.
Yes.
When we say we're evacuating everybody in the A and B zones, the number one phone call we get is, I live in the B section, just clarifying, that means me. And we're like, no, that doesn't mean you. So we actually got new data and information a few years ago from the National Hurricane Center, who models where this water might go. They do these hypothetical model runs, thousands of potential fake hurricanes. And they give us, this is where we think the water is going to go, depending on each individual storm we ran. So we had new data anyway. And that new data was going to cause us to maybe change the boundaries of the old lettered zones anyway. So we kind of put our heads together in the small emergency management team that we have and said, you know what? What can we do different? So we don't have to be the same as the rest of the state. This is all about protecting people who live in Flagler County. So we can be different. What can we do? Well, this new data actually allows us to drill down to neighborhoods. So in the past, you used to have to do an entire swath of the county.
Yeah.
The new data, because newer computers, newer models allow us to do things more accurately. We can drill down to neighborhoods now. So and we know the names of each neighborhood, and even if it doesn't have to have an official name, like there's some areas in Flagler Beach off of Lambert Avenue, which is, there's a lot of homes in there. We'll call it the Lambert Avenue area. There's no big sign that says blah, blah, blah neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
But we know that, so we call it the Lambert Avenue area, that kind of stuff. So because we know this, we're like, hey, let's go away from the letters that are definitely causing confusion. I mean, we've had so many phone calls every time we do evacuations. Let's do neighborhoods. Then we're like, well, but we're trying to get people educated for the hurricane season. We just can't tell you, well, this neighborhood you might have to evacuate, though we kind of can. But there's so many neighborhoods. That's a lot of work, and that's a lot of writing and printing out and trying to educate people. So what if we take this new information from the Hurricane Center, overlay all the neighborhoods underneath it, so we use that as a tool for issuing evacuations by neighborhood. But on a day like today, when there's no hurricane coming, let's just merge all the potential neighborhoods that are going to be impacted together and create a new cohesive potential hurricane evacuation zone. So if you live anywhere within our newer potential hurricane evacuation zone, you may have to evacuate for a hurricane, where people who aren't in that zone most likely won't have to evacuate because of storm surge. So our education on a day like today is you are in the zone. You live in the zone. It's actually colored pink right now on our maps, just because we had used other colors before and didn't want to confuse people. So if you're on the eastern side of the county and you live within the new, and I say new, we actually released it a year and a half ago or so, but it's still newish, that you may have to evacuate. It might be decades, or it might be never in your lifetime that you ever had to evacuate, but you should be prepared for the potential that you may have to evacuate for a hurricane specifically. When the hurricane's actually coming, we will then say which neighborhoods within that pink zone, potential hurricane evacuation zone, that particular storm actually applies to. So because we had the better data, we were able to go away from the A, B, C, D, E, F that caused concerns. What we ended up with, we have 2 potential zones now. On the eastern side of the county, and it's the pinkish zone, we call the potential hurricane evacuation zone. On the western side of the county, in an area that kind of radiates out from Crescent Lake, we call it a potential lake flood zone. So we were using very clear, plain English. Lake obviously applies to a lake, and people out there sitting there, I'm going to the lake. So we're using areas and nomenclature that's, we think, a little easier to understand in general, and that you're living in an area that might be impacted because of a hurricane. Again, hurricanes are unique. It's the only disaster or emergency that we may have to, that we can pre-plan for in that fashion. Something like a tornado, I can't create zones for tornadoes because we really have no idea where they're going to go. The Weather Service doesn't really know where they're going to go for sure. So
you don't know, Jonathan, when a tornado, come on.
That's top secret information.
It's classified.
But so we very much simplified it. And the same token, we took good advantage of today's technology. On our website, on the emergency management website, on the county's webpage, you can actually put in your address, or anybody's address in the county, and actually determine whether or not your house is in one of those 2 zones.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So our GIS, or Geographic Information Systems team, they built a beautiful interactive map that people just put in the address, zooms right into that address, and says you're not in a zone, you're in the potential hurricane evacuation zone, or you're in the potential lake flood zone.
Well, that's interesting, and it does lead up to a common question that we got here in Flagler County, which is, should I stay or should I go? So what should determine whether somebody evacuates or hunkers down during a storm?
I think number one, it really is about evacuation orders. So if we order an evacuation, and some communities do voluntary evacuations, mandatory evacuations, my goal is not to have to do evacuations unless there truly is a hazard. So when we do evacuations, they are 100%, they are mandatory. Now, we live in a free country. We're not going to go pull you out of your house. It is your right. It is your right to stay there.
Yes.
But we may not be able to provide you. So we're evacuating because A, we think your life is at harm, potential danger. And we say potential. I love the Weather Service. We can't do this without the Weather Service, but they're only funded so much. Weather, as we all know, weather forecasts aren't always correct. So are there going to be times where we evacuate you and then a day later, like, nothing happened? Why did I? Based on the science and what the Weather Service is telling us, when we make an evacuation order, it is because based on the best science available, they think something's going to happen to that particular part of the county. So we will do those evacuation orders. Again, we'll message them by neighborhood. And it might be a large, we may say everyone that lives on the island. That's, everyone knows if they live on the Barrier Island or not. Or everyone who lives east of the intracoastal waterway or something like that. Or if it's big enough. If it's smaller, we may say, we'll name neighborhoods. Grand Haven, Palm Coast Plantation. I'm thinking of some along the intracoastal waterway. So again, we're doing it based on science. And is there a chance that you're going to say, I don't know, I'm not going to listen to Jonathan again because last time he told me to leave and nothing happened? that is a risk, and we're very much concerned about that because we don't want people to say, well, I made it through the last one, I didn't have to evacuate. Because even every storm is different, and every category 1 storm is not going to be the same as another category 1 storm. So while you might have been lucky ignoring us one time, the next time you may not be lucky. And that's what our really big concern is. Even if you have the strongest house ever built, maybe we have some brilliant civil engineer that lives here and built the strongest building, and they're right on the ocean. The story I like to tell people is, on a normal day, you call 911, like you have a heart attack, or because you fall and break your hip or something like that, right? You take it for granted that a whole lot of people show up really, really fast. We have great law enforcement, great fire, great ambulance service here in the county. And all 3 of those entities all show up within minutes. We're spoiled in our community. A lot of places in the country don't have that level of service. And we're very lucky for that. So even if you live in the strongest house in the world based on you hired an engineer to build the best thing ever, what if you had that heart attack or you fell in the middle of a hurricane? That thing you take for granted today, that dialing 911, there becomes a point in time in the middle of a storm where we can't send assistance anymore. So even if you truly believe I'm going to stay on my ship, my house, there's a point in time in the bigger storms where we cannot send somebody to help you. And what you take for granted on a regular basis, that service being there, we can't offer that service in this community because it's too windy. We can't, if winds are 100 miles an hour, for example, we can't have fire trucks and police cars and ambulances driving through that to get you. It's just we would potentially be killing responders just because someone didn't listen to that evacuation order. So we don't want that to happen to our responders. We don't want them hurt. We don't want them killed just because someone didn't choose to honor an evacuation order. We do take the orders very seriously. We know when we do evacuations, it shuts down businesses. That impacts our economy. We have no desire to do that. So it truly is when we are doing that evacuation order, we are truly out of other options and we're truly out of time. We can't wait any longer because we have information details as how long it takes people to all leave the island or all leave between the Intracoastal and I-95. We drill down in that minutia and then we kind of build these backwards timelines of, hey, this is the last minute I can wait before we make this call so everyone can leave safely. So we truly are looking at it scientifically and understanding the impacts to our community of people leaving their homes, of businesses having to shut down. So we do take that very seriously, and we would rather not evacuate if we don't have to. So we are very much understanding the potential consequences of doing that.
Yeah, you do take it for granted. You don't think, oh, what if my dog bites my child, or you have some sort of diabetic episode or what have you, and that can happen at any time. So what are the differences between warnings and watches?
So in the current world of the Weather Service, and they've used other terms in the past, but warnings and watches are the most common terms you hear in today's world. A watch means, in general, conditions are ripe for whatever that watch is for. So if a tornado watch is made for our community or a portion of our community, that means conditions are right for tornadoes to form. A warning means that weather condition is imminent or is actually happening. Sometimes I wish they'd use some other wording, but it's so embedded throughout our entire country, it's kind of hard to change something like that.
Yeah.
So a tornado watch means in our forecast for the next whatever period of time, because they give you start times and end times in those, means that conditions, which are typically storms, they're expecting heavy thunderstorms that have the potential of spinning off tornadoes, is one example. A tornado warning specifically means they have seen the clouds spin already. They don't necessarily know that it touched the ground or not, but it very well could have. But they see the rotation in the storm that's indicative of a tornado. So that's what a warning is. So when your phone goes off for a tornado warning, and that little siren goes off on your phone, that means somewhere in that area they're seeing the spinning happening. The one weakness with that automated system on your phone is it alerts everybody within a county. The smallest area that they alert for is for a county. However, to get better alerts, we actually have a system here in Flagler County called Alert Flagler, where you can put in specific addresses. So you can put a home address, a work address, a kid's school address, and family member's address, and you'll still, unless you turn them off, you'll still get those nationwide alerts that are shrunken down to a county level, but you'll also get more specific alerts based on the neighborhood that address is in. So if a tornado is traveling in the southern part of the county, on the national alerting system that comes across your phone that sounds kind of like an Amber Alert, the whole county is going to get warned that a tornado warning is for Flagler County. But under the Alert Flagler system, only those that are within the potential path of that, which may only be the southern third of the county, will get that other warning. So we definitely want people to sign up for that because we can get more specific alerts than countywide.
So you're saying like at 3 a.m. when I get like the national one and I just roll back over and go back to sleep, I can do that. And then when the Flagler one pops up, I need to get out of bed.
I wouldn't say that because, unfortunately technology fails, right?
Yeah.
And
so I can sleep.
You should sleep. You should wake up because I'm pretty sure that's going to wake you up and wait and see and try to see if you can go onto the internet and find out, are you in the path, or wait for that second alert to come. And actually, when we send our alerts, there's a link in it, and if you click the link, a little map will show up. And you'll actually see the fact that your address was underneath that little map.
Oh, wowza.
And tornado's just one example, but that's a very scary example. Because tornadoes do injure and kill people and destroy property.
This is true. Well, how do people sign up for that service?
So Alert Flagler, there's a couple different ways of doing it. Actually, three different ways. One, because it's a site we really want people to memorize, is go to flaglercounty.gov/emergency. And the very first button you see on there says Alert Flagler Notifications. And you just follow the instructions. A shortcut to that, you can also go flaglercounty.gov/alertflagler. And we know a lot of people don't necessarily like the internet. Though they're listening to the podcast, they probably are more comfortable than others with the internet. But some people don't like the internet or know somebody that's just doesn't have access to the internet or is not a fan of using it. You can just call us during normal business hours at
cool.
Yeah, 386-313-4200, and either one of our volunteers or one of our staff will do the registration for you over the phone.
Oh, can you repeat that number slower?
Sure. 386-313-4200. And that's the same number when the Emergency Operations Center is activated for a hurricane. We set up a call center and we use that same number.
Oh, excellent.
So we're very big on making sure that have people remember two things for emergencies, flaglercounty.gov/emergency or 313-4200. And that's how you reach us on a normal basis. But also in an emergency, it's the same number. So we try to keep it super simple. It does all kinds of fancy stuff, like the phone line redirects to the call center. The website will redirect to the current emergencies information. But we work very hard with our IT folks and our webmaster, Carlos, to make sure that we can do those kinds of redirecting and to make it simple so people, if they are going to remember one web page, we want it to be ours because then they can go there in an emergency.
Absolutely. Okay, I have a viewer question. So what are some common misconceptions or myths about hurricane preparedness that you encounter, and how do you address them?
All right, so one of the first ones is putting tape on your windows. We'll stop the windows from breaking.
Oh my gosh.
That is...
Mom, are you out there listening right now? Tape doesn't work.
It does not. It might look pretty if you do a nice design with the tape, maybe. I don't know. But it has zero effect on... So picture this, and this might be weird, but we have palm trees, and some of these palm trees have coconuts, even though coconuts aren't native to Florida, or they have large...
I have no idea. They're not native to Florida?
I don't believe they are.
I might have to fact check you on that one, Jonathan.
Please do, because I'd like to know if I'm wrong. I got a feeling they're not native to Florida. But if that coconut comes flying through your window in the middle of a hurricane at 100 miles an hour, it's not going to stop because of that tape.
It's going to immediately stop and say, wait, guys, there's tape.
Oh, they're going to shut. It's not going to say, oh, that's Scotch tape. I can go through. That's duct tape. I'm not messing with that window.
You're not going to mess with the duct tape.
But unfortunately, that is probably the number one urban myth.
Yeah.
For hurricanes in Florida is put tape on your window. And it's not going to make the window less dangerous if it does break. It's still going to break into broken glass, and it's still going to cut you, hurt you, and all that stuff. And honestly, the big risk with breaking windows, because if you're staying home during a hurricane because you're home safe enough to do so, you shouldn't be near the window anyway.
No, this is true.
So having the window and glass cut you is really not the concern. It's once the window breaks, the pressure and the water can get into your house. So that's really what the concern is. So size of glass shards really doesn't make a difference. It's the fact now your house has been penetrated. The correct answer that is you should have proper shutters, hurricane shutters, or hurricane windows, or even there's something called hurricane fabric, which is a brand name, kind of like Xerox is to photocopiers. But there literally is hurricane-proof fabric you can put across your windows, and it kind of works like a trampoline when that coconut comes, it just bounces off.
That dang coconut.
That darn coconut.
Remove the coconuts, people.
That's probably the number one myth. Number two is, particularly to Flagler County, is very unique to our county, is my realtor told me we don't get hurricanes. I hear that all the time.
Really?
Yes, I hear it so frequently. It drives me nuts to hear that constantly be told. I don't.
Who is this rogue realtor that's
passing
out?
One of them. There's one realtor telling her. I don't know if it goes back to the 70s when Palm Coast was being marketed to the Northeast U.S. saying, well, everywhere in Florida, I don't know how far back this myth goes. We get hurricanes. We may not have a history that's the same as Miami and Fort Lauderdale and Palm Beach and Fort Myers, but history doesn't really matter at the end of the day, because if one hurricane comes, your realtor's not going to say, sorry, I'm wrong. So we 100% get hurricanes. Historically, has our frequency and the category of storms in general been less here than they have in South Florida? Yes. I can't deny that. History is history, right? But the panhandle of Florida, a few years ago, Hurricane Michael made it was a catastrophic hurricane up there. The entire panhandle before that had never had a catastrophic hurricane. So the panhandle for years could say, we don't get Category 4 and 5 hurricanes, but that wasn't true. It was no longer true the minute it happened. We're just as much at risk as they are, and honestly, our risk profile is getting higher because ocean temperatures are warmer. So stronger storms can be further north than they used to be even 5 or 10 years ago. So even in shorter history, 5 or 10 years from now, you can see stronger storms further north than they used to be because the fuel, which is the warm water, is way further north than it has ever been, at least in recorded history.
Oh, wow.
Maybe millions of years ago it might have been.
Yeah, well, no one's around
no one
to
was here to
disprove
record
you
that.
on
Yeah, exactly.
that one, Jonathan. So, okay. We touched upon this already with the Alert Flagler. How does Flagler County communicate emergency information and updates before, during, and after a hurricane?
So probably the most active way, and again, this is not the solution for everybody, but one of our most active ways is truly through social media.
Okay.
And we have a presence on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. A lot of folks ask us, how come we're not on TikTok? We are a government, and we're not allowed to be on TikTok. Individuals way higher, more powerful than local government have told us we're not supposed to be using TikTok, so we don't. But the three platforms we are on, it's all /Flagler EOC if you're trying to find us. Do you look for Flagler EOC? And EOC is Emergency Operations Center. If you search for that, you'll find us on all Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. That's probably our most active. When I say most active, it's because we're on there a couple times every single day. We even do Flagler local forecasts every weekday morning, and we post them up there. So if you're watching the Orlando news, I know typically you're talking about Orlando's temperatures, and Jacksonville news talks about Jacksonville's temperatures or rain. We work with the Weather Service to create very Flagler specific forecasts. We post them every weekday morning. But on top of that, we post preparedness information every day as well on there, just to make sure people are familiar with us and seeing that we're exist and we stay active in their feeds. And then in a disaster, we very quickly post information on there. But we also do press releases. Now, the general public doesn't directly get press releases usually, but press releases allow our information then to get picked up by the TV stations, the radio stations, the newspapers, the blogs on the internet. So that press release process allows us to push information out as well. If it's something big like an evacuation, we'll use Alert Flagler. But if you don't give us your information, then we can't reach out to you. So we really need you to subscribe to Alert Flagler. We do have the ability in that Alert Flagler system to kind of draw a picture on a shape on a map and call traditional phone numbers in there. But these days, not many people have traditional phones anymore. So we really do rely on our residents giving us their numbers and their addresses so we know how to reach out to you. And then our website, as we mentioned earlier, flaglercounty.gov/emergency. Anything we're posting on social media or alerting through the Alert Flagler system will also post on our website, especially during a big event like a hurricane. We just try to blanket everything. And then actually in our Emergency Operations Center, we actually have an area called our press room where we invite the media to come interview with us, even stay with us during a hurricane so they can help get that information out for us. We even have a radio studio in there where we have a live link to Flagler Broadcasting, which owns 4 or 5 different radio frequencies here in Flagler County and different kinds of music and talk stations. And we can, at any moment with a second's notice, be talking on the air live as if we were in their studios.
Oh, that brings us to another point. What if, because cell reception will go out during a hurricane, so what if people don't have access to the social media or the website?
So yes, and I love talking about this, particularly to younger groups. I'll always poll the younger groups and ask them, how many of you have an AM or FM radio? And I get these wonderful blank stares. And I say, well, how do you get your music? And they all pick up their phones and wave it at me like I'm silly because I said, well, Mike, where do you think we get our music from? And I don't know where that age range is. Somewhere I think in the mid 40s, or probably between 40 and 50 is that bracket where they probably still have a radio squirreled away. If you're older than that, if you're younger than that, you're like, I've never touched it.
Yeah.
I've heard of that thing in my car, but I don't use it because I just Bluetooth my iPhone to play my music. Here's the thing: when that fancy technology that all relies on the internet, the connected devices, which every one of our cell phones is a connected device. When we can't charge them or plug them in, when we can't get an internet signal, we can't get service from the cell towers, you can't get alerts, you can't get messages, you can't look up things on the internet, you can't go on social media. Yet that old-fashioned stuff, as people would call it, which is AM, FM radio, which is not old-fashioned because I personally love listening to FM radio particularly. That stuff keeps working because that stuff is built on older technology. It may not be as fancy, it may not be as the sound quality may not be as good as what you can get from your mobile device today. But you know what? That stuff lasts. It's typically built stronger because it was built to last longer. And we have Flagler Broadcasting, who we partner with, has radio antennas that broadcast their signals here in Flagler County.
Oh, wow.
So it's not all the way out in Orlando. It's not all the way up in Jacksonville. The radio antennas are here in Flagler County. But you have to have a traditional AM, FM radio if all that other connected stuff stops working. And then you can tune in and then listen to our updates from the Emergency Operations Center of Are there shelters open? Are you being evacuated? Is it okay to go back now? Are we giving out food and water or tarps because now we have damage in our community? We will use social media, assuming the internet is up, but if not, we will be on that traditional AM/FM radio to make sure that we get that information out.
Excellent. Okay, next question. Are there specific initiatives or programs aimed at vulnerable populations, such as, the elderly or low-income residents, to ensure safety during hurricanes?
So particularly for those with medical issues where they are being cared for at home, at their regular home, by home health aides. So, if someone has worse illnesses, a lot of times, especially if they're older, will end up in assisted living facilities or nursing homes. Those facilities have their own emergency plans. We actually work with them to make sure they have proper emergency plans. So those facilities, if they have to evacuate, they have brother or sister facilities elsewhere where they evacuate to. So if you or a family member lives in an assisted living facility or a nursing home, it is that facility's responsibility to take care of you if they have to evacuate. However, we also realize there are a lot of people in Flagler County that are able to stay at home but rely on nursing care or medical care on a daily basis to allow them to stay at home. Those people may still have to evacuate, and our regular shelters that we call general population shelters can't necessarily provide that same kind of medical care. We don't have medical staff there. However, we do partner with the health department. So the Florida Department of Health's Flagler office has a lot of nurses. They even have a doctor. They have other medical professionals that every day take care of our community, right? So we actually partner with them, and one of the shelters will open in a large event like a hurricane is something called a special needs shelter. And if you are a resident that requires that daily medical care, we want to make sure that you can continue to receive at least a minimum level of medical care in the shelter if you choose to evacuate to a shelter in particular. And that special needs shelter that we partner with the health department for will provide that level of care. Now, if you're someone with higher acuity, meaning you're sicker but you're still at home, our great friends at Advent Health Hospital, they partner with the health department and us as well, and sometimes we end up placing some of the evacuees in their facilities as well. But it's all based on we do an analysis. The medical professionals, we don't, but the medical professionals do an analysis of each client on a case-by-case basis, saying this person we can take care of in the special needs shelter. This person doesn't even need the special needs shelter. That's okay to go to a regular shelter. Or this person will partner with a hospital or nursing home and place this person in the hospital or nursing home on our behalf. So we have this great partnership. We rely on all these other people to help make these decisions. But just like if we don't have your phone number, we can't call you with Alert Flagler. If you don't register on our same website, flaglercounty.gov/emergency, if you're one of these people that receives or a relative receives this daily medical care and may have to evacuate because of a hurricane, if you don't let us know ahead of time, then we can't prepare. It doesn't mean you have to register for us because we're going to take care of you no matter what. But if you let us know ahead of time, then we can be better prepared. The health department can be better prepared. So we do highly recommend that a family member or the individual themselves register that individual if they are receiving that medical care at home. So we are aware of what their medical needs are. So if we do open that shelter, that we can make sure that the right care is available in the shelter for them.
Okay, Jonathan, so we have one more question for you, and then we'll let you go. We'll free you. You're free from this podcast. What parting words of wisdom or advice can you give to our residents and visitors?
I think the most important thing is to be prepared. I would say be prepared, not scared. And I didn't invent that. Someone else said that, and it rhymes nicely.
I wouldn't have even fact-checked that. Well, thank you so much, Jonathan. This was very informative, so thank you for joining the show.
It was my pleasure.
Okay, everybody. So for more discussions about all things Flagler, visit us at flaglercounty.gov/podcast. That's flaglercounty.gov/podcast. And thanks for everyone listening. Until next time.